everyone. Hello and welcome to the new moon in Sidereal Aries intention setting practice. I'm Phaedra. Of course, sorry, we're starting a few minutes late. I had to shut the windows because my neighbor's dogs were barking and that was kind of a little distracting. But I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystick, Physick, Astrology for anyone who's joining us new to the broadcast. I use Western Sidereal Astrology in my practice. Excuse me, let me make one final adjustment here so you can maybe hear. I use Western Sidereal Astrology. The real idea for the broadcast is providing guidance for you on how we can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets to affect our lives in a positive way. Thanks everyone for joining. So in this broadcast, you're going to need your Fagan Bradley Sidereal Natal Chart. And I'm going to drop a link for that in the comments real quick. So hold tight. Because you're going to want to know your sidereal rising sign and possibly your sidereal sun sign if you're wanting to do this practice for your sun sign as well. And I just need to refresh my browser here real quick. Let's see. Gosh. I am in the wrong group. Where's my group? I didn't get my browser ready before the broadcast because I was busy shutting all the windows. Here we go. There. Now, let's pull that and I'll be able to see your comments. If anyone has comments or questions during the broadcast, please let me know. Hi, Tracy. It's good to see you. So here's a link. You can get, just grab a screenshot of your chart, plug in your birth data, okay? Because you'll need it for the broadcast. And what we're going to go over tonight, we're going to explore Aries themes, right? So we're going to be exploring themes around initiative and conflict and competition. We're going to talk about when and why it's okay to be selfish. And we're going to set intentions for bringing something brand new into the world or into our personal experience. So the idea is intentionally using astrological transits to manifest greater purpose and direction in your life. And so that's what we're doing tonight. Grab a pen and paper. Make sure you do have that sidereal natal chart, or at least know your rising sign, and we're going to use the new moon to manifest. Let's get started. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular new moon and what we have going on astrologically right now, how that'll flavor our experience and the potential outcome for this new moon. I'm going to go into, in the second part of our broadcast, we'll talk about each house that this is falling for each of you by your sidereal rising sign. So we'll go over what house it's going to be in, what the themes of that house are for you. So if you want to work with it with your natal blueprint, you can do that. Hi, Jonna. It's good to see you. I'm excited to have you with us tonight. And then in the third part of the broadcast, what we'll do is we'll go over the themes and the archetypes relevant to Aries, and we'll explore some prompts that we can use for setting intentions tonight with the new moon. The new moon is actually happening tomorrow my time zone. But we do the broadcast just ahead of the new and full moons so that we can get them up on the YouTube channel in time for folks to do the practice all around the world. So let's talk a little bit about what's up with this new moon. It's kind of a crazy one. We have Mars out of bounds. That's the first thing that I want to talk about because that's a really significant part of the transits that we have going on now. Y'all might be feeling this one, and I'll explain what it means and how it can express. But Mars actually went out of bounds late last month on the 20th of April. And when a planet is out of bounds, what that means is that the planet is orbiting either north beyond the Tropic of Cancer or south beyond the Tropic of Capricorn, so beyond the bounds of the ecliptic, right? So when that happens, the planetary energy is expressed a little bit differently. It's expressed in a little bit more maverick, kind of rebellious fashion. It's a little more against the grain, against the status quo. It's radical, it's shocking sometimes, right? So it's an outsized expression that is really beyond what we would normally consider acceptable, right? And so with Mars, this means that we might be more headstrong than normal. We might be way more impulsive than normal, but we also might be way more driven more brave, more courageous. So these are extreme expressions of the planetary energy when we're talking about out of bounds transits, right? So we can also be a lot more self-centered, right? Because this is Mars we're talking about. We can be a lot more impulsive. We can be overly aggressive and far too quick to engage in conflict. And so that's something that you really want to kind of be cognizant of, because that's going to flavor how we experience the new moon in Aries, because Mars is ruling this new moon, okay? So we're talking about rash behavior, uncharacteristic behavior. So the tendency to pick fights unprovoked or overreact in anger. So just be aware. Try to cultivate patience as much as you can. Cultivate compassion as much as you can, right? For yourself and for others. Be forgiving and practice forgiving and forgetting. So this influence is kind of a long-term influence. We're going to experience this through mid-June, okay? So through mid-June, this is long enough to flavor the outcome of our new moon, right? Not only how we experienced it during the present transit, but what the final result outcome is of whatever we start right now. So be aware of that and consider, as we get deeper into the practice, consider ways that you might want to leverage Mars out of bounds, flavoring this new moon in a way that might tap into some of that more positive energy. There may be some things that you can do to kind of channel how that energy is expressed in terms of what it is you intend to start with this new moon, okay? We also have Mercury entering Aries right now. That happens today. This is a 2-week transit, so it's a really kind of, it's super short. Mercury tends to move 2-ish weeks, 2.5-ish weeks through a sign, sometimes a little bit less than 2 weeks, depending on what part of his orbit he's in. So what happens then with Mercury moving into Aries, we end up having Mars, right? Or we have, no, Mars is in, I'm out of my notes here. I'm out of my notes. Oh, I know. I have my notes here. Haha. So we can check our dates right here. Normally I have these ready for you. So we have Mars right now in Taurus. He's going to be changing signs. I'm just double checking this because I have been moving through May and June, and I don't want to give you wrong dates since I have multiple months going through my head at one time. So from May, so Mars changes signs on the 8th into Gemini. So right now we have Mercury shifting into Mars's sign, and then in just a couple of days we're going to have Mars shifting into Mercury's sign. And so that's what we call mutual reception. And that is also going to further flavor what's going on in the coming couple of weeks. And so let's talk a little bit about mutual reception and how that can express. So when planets are mutually received, they can take on each other's qualities. They can, the energies are a little bit more blended in that regard, right? And so this dynamic, and later on we're going to have Mercury going out of bounds, that's going to get exciting. This dynamic can make us really argument prone, right? Really verbally aggressive, potentially. Really conflict oriented. Road rage, okay? Aggression, well, you know, you're on the road. Be aware, these are like excitable passions can be coming up in the coming couple of weeks, and this is going to be pretty strong, pretty kind of intense energy. So I'd encourage you to channel it as constructively as you can, and the way you can do that with Mars is through physical activity. You can do that through sports. You can do that through any kind of thing that allows you to move the body, to move that aggressive energy out. So consider ways that you can incorporate some kind of physical activity into your life to kind of channel that maybe as we move through the next several weeks, right? And then think of ways that you can channel your Mercury energy, right? So this is transportation. I don't know that there'd be much to explore there. Like, you'd want to be careful exploring transportation as an outlet right now, just given the astrological situation. But maybe writing or journaling, something like that, where you can really kind of actively engage language to kind of channel and express whatever kind of passions you're experiencing, or any, if you're frustrated emotions, things like that. Maybe channel them through writing. And so these are some ways that you can use other activities to kind of divert what are otherwise maybe kind of raucous energies right now. But with this new moon in Aries, so Mars is ruling. He's still kind of plodding slowly through Taurus, right? And so this is where we're still in that kind of stubborn stage, that kind of passive-aggressive stage. And we're not really going to shift out of that until Mars moves into Gemini on the 8th. And so with this new moon, what I would encourage you to do is to kind of tap into it and just to discover and explore ways that you can incorporate greater enjoyment and pleasure into your experience, maybe. But be aware of the tendency to kind of be super passive when Mars is in Taurus, and maybe that's why we're experiencing this so much more like urgently, right? This aggressive Martian energy, because he is in Taurus and there's not another outlet, because Taurus is kind of it's not an active energy, right? It's fixed Earth, and so it's very stable, very slow, very steady. It's hard to get it moving, and so Mars can kind of be frustrated there. Partly because, in a sense, he's in detriment or fault. I mean, he's in a negative state because he's in a Venus-ruled sign, right? And Venus represents the opposite kind of energy of Mars. And so this is frustrating. Give it a couple of days. When Mars moves into Gemini, we might be able to move more of this energy out. And then, of course, consider these more active ways to do that via, physical activity and via writing and, or, some other singing, anything that gets your words, your thoughts, all that flowing out, right? So that's what I kind of want to encourage you to explore in the coming couple of weeks. But be aware that passions can run high right now, higher than normal. Mars is really kind of being temperamental. We've got Jupiter in the mix, right? That kind of expands this and can amplify what we're experiencing with Mars. So if tempers flare right now, there's not a lot of chance that either side is going to be willing to cooperate or concede. Okay, so if that's your situation, try and be patient. Try and just kind of chill as much as you can and give it some space of time until after the 8th, once Mars moves into Gemini, and then see if you can't kind of channel out that frustrated energy before you try to engage in any kind of dialogue. And just be aware that dialogue is fraught with risk in the coming couple of weeks, because we're going to have this mutual reception, we're going to have the Mars out of bounds energy, we've got Jupiter in the mix, and then very soon we're going to have Mercury moving out of bounds. And he'll be out of bounds the rest of the time Mars is out of bounds. So it's gonna be a fun June and May. So that kind of wraps the first part of our broadcast. The second part of the broadcast, we're going to get into the houses and the themes of each house by rising sign. Let me check some comments coming through. Jonna says Mars is conjunct my natal Venus right now. Oh, that's challenging, especially right now, Jonna, because it's the conjunction and because we have Mars out of bounds. So a conjunction is about the strongest kind of aspect you can get between two planets, right? It amplifies and combines the energy of both, but it can do it in ways that either help or hinder. Part of that will depend on the essential dignity, right, of your planets involved. Part of that will depend on any other types of aspects going on, especially aspects to your natal, but also aspects to the transiting planet that's conjoining. But a conjunction, because because it's the two stacked or more, stacked right on top of one another, essentially, in terms of energy alignment, that contains all the potential aspect expressions within it. And so that's what makes conjunctions unpredictable in that sense, is that they can go any of those directions, because the 360-degree circle contains every potential aspect expression. In a situation like this, where we have Mars out of bounds, we have Jupiter in the mix, we have other things going on, I would say it's more likely to be challenging. And then, of course, that can be compounded or eased by whatever you have going on in your own natal chart. But I sympathize with you there. I don't imagine that's much fun right now. Do what you can. Self-care is super, super important right now. Especially self-care that allows you to move through frustration and just allows you to breathe, right? Like, because we can be real impatient. We can be real quick-tempered. It's hard to keep yourself on an even keel, right? This is a passionate, active energy. And so it's all over the place, right? Like, you could be perfectly fine one moment and just snap the next, and then be perfectly fine again like 5 minutes later, or not. Like, that's more like what we'll experience when Mars moves into Gemini. With it in Taurus, it's more like grinding out, right? Mars is coming up on my progress ascendant in early Gemini, Danielle says. Yes, that'll be fun, Danielle. I would channel that physically, like we were talking, especially where it's your ascendant, because that's really more, physical body. And so if you can find a way to tap into physical activity to channel that Mars, if you've got a heavy bag out in the garage or something, like anything like that is a good way to kind of move through that. What we'll do now is we'll wrap up the first part of our video. I'm going to move into the houses and rising signs. So grab your chart if you know your rising sign. That's perfect. If you want to jot down for your sun sign too.